What's going on, everybody? This is John Jake Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a very special episode of the NCSL Dynasty, located exclusively on college football Revamped. We have made it through the entirety of the regular season, and not only did we make it through the entirety of the regular season, but we also made it through Conference Championship weekend, so we are in the thick of not only postseason action, but we are also in the beginning phases of bowl season, and it's going to be a good one here in bowl season, because what you guys are going to get is that all of these games that do not include a college football playoff game, so there's going to be an 18 college football playoff. You saw that bracket in the previous episode. Any game that does not involve the college football playoff, you are going to get it here in this episode. So it's going to be a little bit longer of an episode than what you might be accustomed to here in the NCSL Dynasty, but it's going to be a very fun one here in the NCSL Dynasty at the same time, because a bunch of games here in bowl season. So go ahead, get yourself comfortable, get some popcorn as well. We got a great one in store for you guys. I hope you guys are excited for it as well. If you are, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new to the channel. And let's go ahead and jump right into bowl season. I'll see you guys in the various football fields around the country. So we will go ahead and get bowl season action going early, as we will hop into the very first bowl game that we have in this episode, and that is going to be that New Mexico Bowl that we have between the Iowa State Cyclones, representing the American Conference, taking on the Pittsburgh Panthers, who do come in ranked number 16 in the country. So two very solid teams to get bowl season officially underway, as we'll hop in late in the first quarter. Iowa State does have an early 2-0 lead, as that is a fantastic grab by Ray Reed, who's able to get them inside the 5-yard line. And now it's a matter of, can the Cyclones finish in the red zone? And they do. Eric Washington is going to extend the lead for the Cyclones. In Pittsburgh, they're going to be put on notice here early. Upsets can certainly happen here in bowl season. You absolutely never know. And Matt Mackey will run the ball 12 yards. He'll get them into a 1st and goal situation as they search for their first points of this game. Looking over to right hand side and find Greg Robertson in the end zone. That is a touchdown for your Pittsburgh Panthers. Now, jumping into the second half now, still a tight game between these two teams. Could still go either way, but there's a ball on the ground. Pittsburgh had the chance to take the lead. Instead, we are going to see that big boy rumbling and stumbling down the field. That's a huge turnover for Iowa State, as they will eventually go ahead and turn that into a field goal. So now the Pittsburgh Panthers, they do need to go out. They got to get a touchdown on this drive if they want to take the lead. Field goals will no longer help them. As we get less than 3 minutes left in the game, we'll toss to the right-hand side, as we'll see Alex Greenwood fight his way into the end zone. And sure enough, the Panthers, they will retake the lead. And they'll even go for the 2-point conversion. This would be to put them up by 3, but he will actually get stuffed almost behind the line of scrimmage, so Pittsburgh does not get that 2-point conversion. That's going to be really important, because Iowa State, they get down the field and they are going to get the game-winning field goal with less than 10 seconds left in the game. So Iowa State does end up winning 18-16 in order to win the New Mexico Bowl. But now we go ahead and move on to the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, as we got number 25 ranked Boise State. Well, this is essentially a home field for them, as they do not have to leave their home stadium at all for bowl season action. They will be taking on the Louisville Cardinals, who come in 7-5 and representing for the New Look MAC Conference. As we'll go ahead and get things underway, as Louisville definitely the road team, but going to strike first with a nice touchdown pass to Dan Washington. And Louisville does jump out to a 14-0 lead before Boise State, they possibly set themselves up for their first points of the afternoon, and that is when Derek Grant, he's going to take the read option into the end zone. Made it look easy as no one ends up getting touched on that particular possession, and Boise State cuts it down to a score. Now, going into the second half, though, another run for this tailback, and that's going to be the second score for this young man, and that allows Boise State to tie this game up at 14 apiece. We'll see if the Broncos can go on a little bit of a run themselves, as late in the third quarter, they did get a safety as well to take the lead, and that is going to be a touchdown for the receiver, Brownie. Jeff Owens gets his first touchdown pass of the game. And Boise State looking really good right now. 22-14 your score. Owens looking for a second passing touchdown of the game, and he's going to get it. Jeremy Barnes with a 20-yard reception. Boise State really expanding their lead here as it's 29-14 here in Boise, Idaho. However, the Cardinals, they will score with a minute left. And if they can get this two-point conversion, definitely that's a bold strategy because an extra point would make it just a one-score game. They go for two instead. That does not work. So Boise State will end up winning the Idaho Potato Bowl 29-20. And it finishes a great season for the Broncos, who end up going 11-3 here on the season. As now we will go out to the Barstool Arizona Bowl. And that will be between the Mid-Tennessee State Blue Raiders and the Utes of Utah. Utah, a little bit disappointing of a season for them. They start off as a top 25 team, but did not live up to those expectations. We didn't really get a chance to see Mid-Tennessee State this season. They were not in any nationally televised games over the course of the year, but a good team, 7-5, could make things interesting for Utah, even though on paper it does seem like Utah does have the better roster, but that hasn't translated into maybe not as successful a season as what the Utes have wanted. But late in the first quarter, still a tied game at 0 apiece. Jeremy Steffens does get them inside the 5-yard line. We'll see if they go to him again. It looks like they do. Jeremy Steffens not even getting touched until he finds his way into the end zone, and then he gets hit after that. So Utah is able to take a 7-0 lead. However, it does not take long for the Blue Raiders to possibly come out and respond, as Eric Atkins is going to take the option out for a 5-yard gain. And sets up a 2nd and 5. Atkins looks over the middle of the field and finds Nathan Burley into the end zone, and that is a touchdown for the Blue Raiders. And the Blue Raiders look to try to take the lead. Less than a minute left. Looks over to the right-hand side. This has some space. Can really take it down the sideline. Jeremy Burley inside the 20. Gets cut down finally at about the 15-yard line. But that was the Tennessee State transfer who made that big play. But then it was all for nothing, though, because it was picked off in the end zone with less than 45 seconds left in the half. So Utah does retain the lead for now. But late in the third quarter, Utah still only up by 6 points, able to find Jerome Berkey down the sideline, and Burley is going to give Mid-Tennessee State the lead, as Eric Atkins got a nice little outlet pass there. Screen was set up extraordinarily well. So Utah does have the lead at this point in the game, but now Mid-Tennessee State, they might be trying to take control now, able to force a turnover in the red zone. So the Blue Raiders, they are hanging on for dear life, but how long can they hang on? And how long can they come out here and continue to make a difference? As now Utah trying to take the lead with 6:30 left to play. We got a broken tackle as Willie Bradford will run this ball inside the 5-yard line. So now, 1st and goal yet again with less than 7 minutes to play. Going to run this ball up the middle as Matt Gator. He'll get a nice scoring strike for a touchdown that gives Utah the lead again. But that $1 million question is, can they get this 2-point conversion as well? 6 minutes left to play in the game. It's going to be the 2-point conversion going back to Matt Gator. And the 2-point conversion is good. So Utah does have a 7-point lead, and Mid-Tennessee State can't respond either, so Utah can actually ice this game on this particular drive if they can just take care of the football. Got a second and short here, looks over the middle and finds Jeremy Stephens. Not only is that a first down, but it'll allow them to run a little bit more of this clock if they want to do that. And it looks like that is exactly what they do. They're going to run it down to like 1 or 2 seconds left on the play clock. So Utah, they are going to march on. They're going to win 27-14. That does allow the Utah Utes to get to above 500 on the season. So following that back and forth game in the Arizona Bowl, we are actually going to go down to the Gasparilla Bowl, where we actually do end up seeing our first top 25 matchup of the postseason following conference championship weekend. That is going to take North Carolina, who is ranked number 14 in the country and are champions of the ACC. Well, they'll be taking on the runner-ups from the SEC in the Georgia Bulldogs. They're ranked number 13 in the country. And early on, Georgia's putting together a pretty good performance. Zach Grigsby's going to make this really big catch down the middle of the field for a 35-yard gain, and it eventually leads Georgia into the end zone for the very first time today. And Dan Jones gives the Bulldogs an early 10-0 lead. Meanwhile, North Carolina trying to work its way back as Brian Reese, he's going to have to beat him as a passer. And it looks like he is really struggling to do that right now, as this could be taking the distance possibly. Does get caught from behind, but Georgia starts the next possession in North Carolina territory. We'll see if they can take advantage. And unfortunately, Georgia leaves points on the board. They do not score any points, even with that great field position. But on the second interception for Brian Reese, that's a lot different of a story. That one gets taken back to the crib courtesy of Perry Britton, and Perry Britton makes Georgia extend their lead. Now it's 20-3, and it looks like Georgia is on the verge of running the Tar Heels off the field, but facing some pressure. The ball is on the ground. North Carolina not only going to recover, but Josh Romero, he's going to have a big boy touchdown there himself. That helps North Carolina trying to get back into this game, but they're still down by 10 though, and they still need to find a way to slow out this Georgia offense. Even though they only allowed up 20 points, they've been able to get a bunch of yards today, but North Carolina starting to wake up now. That's a turnover, and North Carolina, they got a chance to make this a one-score game all of a sudden. We'll see if they can accomplish that. Fourth quarter now. Reese faces some pressure, fires off the right-hand side, and Chris Goss finds the end zone. Touchdown, North Carolina. And the Tar Heels, they are right back in this game, and it can now go either way. North Carolina with all the momentum. Brian Reese fires another strut down the middle of the field, and the Tar Heels win 27-20. They come out with 24 unanswered points in order to win the Gasparilla Bowl. But we'll see if the Las Vegas Bowl can live up to what we just witnessed, as Oregon, who's ranked in the top 25, they kind of flamed out a little bit towards the end of the season. They will be taking on a Colorado team that is the champions of the Mountain West Conference. But in spite of having a 10-win season, both teams on the verge or have already accomplished 10-win years. Colorado is not ranked. I am convinced that somebody on the Colorado staff slept with the wives of one of these college football playoff voters, because there's no other good reason why to keep Colorado out of the top 25. But if they can come out here, if they can win this Las Vegas Bowl, they could really put a stamp on this season and get themselves ranked in that final top 25 poll at the end of the year. But first, Travis Parker's going to have to stop turning this football over, because that's already the third interception. Travis Parker just straight up not having a great day today. 5 for 14, 50 yards, and 3 interceptions to go with it. It's just not a good look for this Colorado team. But in spite of all that, they're still in this game and got a chance to chai before we go into the halftime locker room. But that's yet another turnover. That's the 4th interception that Travis Parker has thrown today. In Oregon, they're going to be starting in the red zone practically. We'll see if they can capitalize. 10 seconds left in the first half. Dropping back. Looks over to the left-hand side. He's got a receiver. And he's going to score. Marcus Myers all by himself. And he was also wide butt naked open as well. So a 14-0 lead for the Oregon Ducks before we go into halftime. And it's just been that type of day for Colorado. Surprised that the Buffaloes have not benched Travis Parker. Usually after the 4th or 5th interception, you would see something like that in terms of maybe seeing what that backup quarterback has. Because Travis Parker, I don't think he's got it today. But he still has a chance to lead his first touchdown drive of the game. And he does find Kyle Hawkins to cut this down to a 1-score game. But Will Flores and company, they're also trying to respond back. Flores looks over to the left-hand side, finds Joe Houston for a touchdown to extend their lead back up to a 2-possession game. And Flores, with less than 4 minutes left, he'll run into the end zone by himself. And Oregon will be putting down Colorado as they are champions of the Las Vegas Bowl. But another top 25 matchup is going to be coming in our direction now as the Navy Midshipmen. They are out here in the Bayou. That is the New Orleans Bowl. They will be taking on a fellow top 25 team. That is the Arkansas Razorbacks. As both teams are in that 20 to 22 range. So could be a very competitive matchup. Going to be interesting to see which style of play ends up winning out, as Arkansas has that more traditional offense that we see here nowadays with, the spread offense, 3-4 wide receivers. While Navy likes to run that triple option, and early on, Arkansas is going to let it fly. Marty Porter going to get the first points of the game for the Arkansas Razorbacks as Michael Motley, he just puts it right on the money, dude. That was just an incredible throw. And it gives Arkansas their first lead of the game as they'll look to continue their success that they experienced in that second quarter. Another big-time throw for Michael Motley where Marty Porter, who's already scored early in this game, well, he gets another big reception here. We'll see if they target him again as Motley's going to fire down the right-hand side, and it's going to be intercepted. That will be a turnover as the Navy defensive back, he just keeps his eyes on the ball the whole time. Does a brilliant job of tracking it. So for now, Navy is able to keep Arkansas's offense at bay, but less than a minute left here. They have a chance to extend this lead further. Looking over to the right-hand side, Maui is going to scramble. He's got some space to work down the sideline, inside the 20 now, but he fumbles the ball. He fumbles the football, and Navy is going to recover. So Arkansas is only going to take a 4-point lead into the half, but here's the crazy part in all of this. Could be a 21-3 game that we're talking about. So, Arkansas definitely leaving some points on the board here for sure. So we'll see if they can take a little bit better job of taking care of this football here, as now in the goal line, a chance for him to finally score yet again. This time they will not be turning the ball over as Carl Murphy able to find himself open over in the corner of the end zone. Arkansas does extend their lead, and that was the ultimate difference. This was a very defensive game that we ended up seeing as the Razorbacks do beat Navy 14-9. As we now go out to the opposite side of the country, we got the Hawaii Bowl, where we will check in on a ranked Army squad. They will be taking on the Rebels of UNLV, and UNLV was a team that also played under the radar this season. We did not see UNLV in any nationally televised games, so a good opportunity for them to get some national exposure. And listen, the Rebels had a good season too. They ended up going 8-4, so they can get to 9-4 and win this bowl game against a ranked team. That could do wonders for Sin City's favorite college football team, as Army will try to get their first points of the game. This also ended up being a defensive slugfest. I was a little surprised with how this game initially turned out, but in the fourth quarter, we do see a little bit more fireworks happen, though, as Army still looking for their first points of the game. They do finally get it by finding John Gallinger in the left-hand side. So Army will also go for the 2-point conversion. This would allow them to tie this game up later in the game. And John Gallinger is there. He had that reception touchdown earlier. Well, he also is important for the 2-point conversion. So now, because they got that 2-point conversion, it allows Army, after they get this touchdown, all they got to do now is get the extra point. And now we're looking at a tie ball game. Army trying to come back and win this game, but UNLV looking to respond, though. 5 minutes left. Going to hand it off to the tailback here, who's going to run his way up to almost the first down marker. Lawrence Robinson had some tough time running on this Army defense. Only averaged a few yards a carry, but even with that, UNLV will go to that ground game, find the end zone, and Mike McNair, different running back, is going to score here. So now it's Army with the lead. And UNLV, after Army does not score, has a chance to run out the rest of his clock, but they choose to throw the football, and it ends in an interception. So, very disgusting game for both sides. Didn't show all the turnovers, obviously, but there was 10 turnovers in this game. UNLV, though, does hold on and win in the Hawaii Bowl. But this next matchup right here, this could be extremely exciting, even though neither team is ranked in the top 25. At least as of right now. We got the Quick Lane Bowl here out in Ford Field. So definitely the definition of a neutral side game, as Notre Dame and Penn State had roughly the same distance to get to Detroit, Michigan. We'll see how this ends up playing out, as both teams came in with high expectations on this season. Neither of them living up to it, but hey, there's no opt-outs in the NCSL, none at all. So should be in for a fun game, and it looks like we are in for a pretty competitive game, as Notre Dame, they're trying to respond. They're trying to take their first lead of the game, as Ed Turner does provide them with the first down. As now, 1st and 10, Ed Turner, he's going to take it on the read option. He's going to pick up 9 more yards to make it 2nd and short again. A premium play action situation, but they're not going to get cute with it this close to the end zone. They're just going to hand it off to Jay Brigham, and that gives Notre Dame the lead. However, Penn State, they don't waste much time marching the ball right down the field, as Penn State wants to retake the lead as they get it out to Jarvis Bell, who gets his second reception of the Quick Lane Bowl. And it sets up 1st and goal. Penn State loading up that line of scrimmage for Justin Hill to handle the rest of the business, and Penn State scores again, and they get another shot after a failed Notre Dame drive. Penn State going to extend their lead here. Another tough run for Justin Hill, as the Nittany Lions, they go and make it a 24-10 game. However, Notre Dame, they want to answer back. They will score before we go into the halftime locker room. So 24-17 ends up being your score, and we got an exciting game. This has turned into an extremely exciting matchup to watch here, as Ed Turner throws to the left-hand side, and that is an absolute dot. Not a lot of space for Marvin McBride to really work off of, but still Ed Turner found a way to squeeze that ball, and it leads to yet another score on the ground for Jay Brigham, and that allows Notre Dame to tie this game up at 24 apiece. Meanwhile, going into the fourth quarter, Notre Dame got a field goal, so they have the lead, but Justin Hill, he's on a mission, as that allows Penn State to get over 100 yards on the ground, and Hill's been a workhorse for that, averaging more than 4 yards a carry. As they go back to Justin Hill again, tough run up the middle, but punches it into the end zone. Touchdown for the Nittany Lions, and Penn State again with the lead. But Notre Dame with a chance to respond. Turner throws over the middle. That's going to be a 6-yard gain. Marvin McBride gets his 5th catch of the afternoon. But on a 3rd and 1, critical play for both teams. Turner looks to the right hand side. It's going to be intercepted. Trying to target Marvin McBride, but they were all over it. Notre Dame will falter, and Penn State is going to win the Quick Lane Bowl in Detroit, Michigan, 31-27. So can some of these other bowl games live up to what we just witnessed, as we now go to the Duke's Mayo Bowl? And the Duke's Mayo Bowl features a Charlotte team that ended up finishing 8-5. They did go to the ACC championship game where they lost to North Carolina, who we did see earlier. They'll take on a Purdue team, and while Purdue is listed as a home team, with this bowl game in the stadium where the Carolina Panthers play, this is a home game in practice for Charlotte, so we'll see if the 49ers, who are one of the newer teams at the FBS level, we'll see if they can take advantage of this home crowd and not really having to travel very far. But again, a low-scoring game between two teams that are, more known for really putting up a lot of points on the board. And that just means that those explosive plays, well, they can happen at any given moment. And Tommy Kraft, well, he provided that explosive play that we were looking for. They'll go ahead and get the extra points. And it seemed like Purdue was ready to run Charlotte off the field, but 49ers do show a little bit of fight. They do end up finding the end zone eventually, but it was just too little too late. Purdue used that second quarter to really just hang on and coast. They win the Mayo Bowl. But another top 25 matchup that we get to witness, 3 of 5 top 25 matchups that you'll end up seeing in this episode. We now go to the Military Bowl that is out in Annapolis, Maryland. And I actually been to this college football stadium before when Cincinnati went to the Military Bowl. I believe it's in the mid-2010s. Very nice stadium. I really like Navy Stadium for the Navy midshipmen. But got Ohio State and Oklahoma going at it against each other. And Ohio State starts with a big play, gets the interception. But can you imagine if Johnson would have just kept his feet in bounds? He could have picked that off. Not only picked it off, but turned that into a pick six. So now Ohio State gets the ball. They're going to try to throw early over to Robert Johnson, but that gets intercepted as well. Robert Tucker just trying to trust his receiver a little bit too much. Probably should have been a little bit more of a lob pass to give the receiver a chance. It ends up being a little bit low scoring until we get into the second quarter. And then the athletes of Ohio State, they really start to show here. Brandon Burks with a beautiful touchdown pass. That makes it 10-0. And then how about Ohio State just dominating at the line of scrimmage? For this particular run, Brian Britt's going to have one of the easier touchdowns that he's going to get. 17-0 your score. As now Ohio State looking to run Oklahoma out of the building possibly. And now Robert Tucker, he's down the sideline. He's in the red zone, and he's not settling for a red zone opportunity. He's going to take it 62 yards for an Ohio State touchdown. The Buckeyes with a 24-0 lead. And they just foot stomped Oklahoma. They kept the boot on their neck, and they kept it rolling. Ohio State wins big in the Military Bowl. But now moving on over back to the opposite side of the country, we got the Holiday Bowl coming up, sponsored by the San Diego Credit Union Association. I think that is the exact bowl sponsor for the Holiday Bowl. It is going to pit Wake Forest against one of the best teams that did not make it into this college football playoff. Cal did get to number 9 after what we just witnessed in conference championship weekend. One of the last teams that were left out of that 8-team playoff, unfortunately. So we'll see how motivated Cal actually is for this particular game, since they were just so close. And the Holiday Bowl is certainly not the same. And early on, it seems like, this could be the perfect recipe for Wake Forest to come out here and pull the upset off. Remember, Cal, in the state of California, so not having to do the same level of traveling that Wake Forest had to do, they're a little bit more familiar with this stadium. So Cal has a 10-7 lead here late in the third quarter. Then their tailback is going to run it out to the left-hand side, as that will set up a first and goal opportunity courtesy of Dominique Hardwood. We'll see if they go back to him, but he actually checks out of the game. Quarterback's going to keep it on the read option, and Andrew Jackson, He's going to punch it into the end zone, and that is a touchdown for the California Bears. Now, 17-10 is your score as Wake Forest tries to answer back. Can they keep up with California? And not only do they do that, but they tie this game up. And matter of fact, Wake Forest will later go on. They take the lead. Wake Forest, fourth quarter, they got a legitimate shot of pulling the upset on the number 9 team in the nation. This would be one of the biggest upsets that we've seen in bowl season. The biggest one since the New Mexico Bowl victory that saw number 16 Pittsburgh go down. But Dominic Harvey, he might have something to say about that. He's going to punch it into the end zone. Tie ball game now as Wake Forest could not respond. But with 2 minutes left, though, a nice shot over the middle to Fred Ferguson, who might ultimately give California the win. And that's exactly what happens. Number 9 California beats Wake Forest 31-24 as they win the Holiday Bowl. But we now go to one of 2 games that is sponsored by Cheez Its. We have the regular Cheez Its Bowl first. We'll see another bowl game that's sponsored by Cheez It later on in this episode. And you know, if you want to look around and see what games are happening when, I will have all those timestamps in the description as well as a pinned comment. But that being said, we have the first Cheez Its Bowl between number 18 Baylor and the unranked South Carolina Gamecocks. We'll see if Baylor can finish their season strong and get to eventually that 10-win season. But South Carolina, they might have other plans, as here we are late in that first quarter of action. We have not seen either team score yet. But with 2 minutes left to go in the first quarter, we finally see that score broken as Martin Wright removes the goose egg for the South Carolina Gamecocks. They'll take a 7-0 lead into the second quarter. However, in that second quarter, Baylor wakes up their offense a little bit. Left-handed quarterback, but still has them rolling out to the right. Doesn't matter though, Bobby Ingram completes the catch and breaks a couple of tackles too in the process. They do, however, miss the extra point though. So you do hate to see it, as Baylor could have tied it there, but even with that touchdown, they do not tie it because their kicker forgot how to kick an extra point effectively, and that could hurt them down the road. You know, these bowl games that we have seen so far, they've been really competitive. It has gone down to a lot of one-possession games for the most part. Not really a lot of upsets that we've gotten to witness, at least so far. But Baylor will look to tie as it got to a 2nd and goal now. Looking around, fires over the middle of the field and finds Chad Pleasant in the end zone. And that is a touchdown for the Baylor Bears. This time they do kick the extra point properly, so it's a tie ball game. And then in that second half, Baylor, they want to take control. Mike Grant looking for the first lead of the game for the Baylor Bears. And while he falls a couple of yards short, they will punch it in a few plays later when Rodney Russ finds the end zone, and Baylor does not only take the lead, but they will not relinquish that lead for the rest of the game as they do win the Cheez Its Bowl 23-20. So up next now we go to the state of Alabama, Sweet Home Alabama, for the Birmingham Bowl presented by Ticketmaster. As the Birmingham Bowl does feature a top 25 team in Kansas State. They're ranked number 23 in the nation, taking on Southern Miss out of the Sun Belt Conference. Southern Miss, a team that started off the season pretty strong. They started off like 3-0 or 4-0, something along those lines. And then, you know, conference play started. They just get absolutely decimated. But Southern Miss is a good team. They played really well in non-conference play. As we'll see what Southern Miss can do now with a 7-0 deficit. Joseph Dixon's going to make the reception, and they will get him inside the 5-yard line. But they're still looking for the first points of the day, and they're going to get it from Alex Ray, the fullback. The fullback got involved, and it's going to make something shake. So Southern Miss ties it up, gets the number 23 team in the nation. And later on, we'll see Kansas State on the other end of being down, but certainly not out. Can Kansas State respond as we come out here for this second half of action? As Kansas State's quarterback will drop back. He's going to try to run it down right inside. Makes a couple guys miss. He's not giving up, but he might have been better suited just going down with the ball. And Southern Miss, they're going to extend their lead further and make sure that they never look back. Kansas State loses in the Birmingham Bowl. As we get away from top 25 teams actually playing, and now go ahead and watch two teams outside the top 25 that for the most part did not get a lot of national attention, but neither of these programs have a problem with that. They like being slept on. Oregon State and Western Kentucky, those will be your two teams participating in the Independence Bowl as we start in the second quarter. Neither team finding the end zone yet, but looks like Western Kentucky has what it takes to finally get on the board for the first time today. Has got first and goal now for the Hilltoppers as they're going to run it up the middle for Juwan Williamson. And not only do the Hilltoppers finally score, but they'll also take the lead with Juwan Williamson getting the school record for most rushing yards in a career. Williamson now with over 4,500 career rushing yards. So congratulations to that young man as Western Kentucky starts to pull away here in that second quarter. And the Hilltoppers take an 11-point lead into the halftime locker room. Or at least that's what I thought. They end up missing the extra point. But we jump into the fourth quarter. Oregon State trying to rally up as their running back Will Johnson gets him inside the 5-yard line for a goal line situation as the Beavers try to punch it in, make it a 3-point game. But there's a ball on the ground though. Charles Wright takes the sack, and they are very fortunate that Oregon State landed on that fumble. That would have been deep trouble if the Hilltoppers recovered. Instead, it's 3rd and goal for the Beavers, and they might make them pay for it depending on what they do on this 4th and goal. Ken Fellows, while he got 12 yards there, still short of goal line. They're going to go for it here as Wright goes to the right-hand side, and Graham Birch able to get away from the defense. Nice design there, and Oregon State makes it just a 3-point game with a chance to drive down and win it all with less than a minute left, but overshoots his receiver. And the only turnover that we see in the Independence Bowl will cost them dearly as Western Kentucky wins 13-10 as the Hilltoppers win the Independence Bowl. But now we go down to the state of Texas, where we got the Texas Bowl, where we'll see Louisiana Monroe, an independent school that's been playing some good football. They did get blown out by LSU, but to be fair, LSU did almost make it into the college football playoff. They're going to be taking on Rice, and these two teams definitely a little bit different. Rice likes to air that football out, whereas UM Monroe, they prefer to keep it on the ground a little bit as they got a perfect quarterback to run that system. Derek Mark, not only is he somewhat athletic, but he is an absolutely tough kid. Haven't really seen either of these programs much this year, so this is going to be a real treat here in the Texas Bowl as the Rice Owls will get it to Brandon Richardson down the sideline for a 7-yard gain. It's just like that, we're already done with that first quarter of action. And if we've seen what we have seen so far in this first quarter, we're going to be in for a really exciting game. But it's really important if you're UL Monroe to continue to pressure. You do not want to play with your food when you're taking on this Rice squad. And sure enough, Rice not scared of the moment. We're going to get out to Steve Wright to get it inside the 5-yard line. Then on the 3rd and goal, they actually set up a screen. And look at that screen. Run to absolute perfection. Rob Johnson finds the end zone for the Rice Owls. And after they got those initial scoring things going, Rice really finds their stride as with less than 15 seconds left, they actually run the ball and sets them up for a Hail Mary opportunity. 6 seconds left. So this could be the final play of the first half, depending on what happens. Dude's got some time too. He's going to let it rip, and the Hail Mary does get completed, but not to a Rice player. But it looks like Rice was really starting to come out of its shell late in that second quarter, as even with that interception, Rice does have a field goal lead. If I'm not mistaken, they might get the ball to start this second half, and sure enough, Rice does. They go march downfield and going to give themselves the biggest lead that they've had in this game, as Marcus Johnson throws his second passing touchdown. But in that second half, it was all Rice. The Owls were dominating. They were hooting their horns to get this bowl game opportunity. 24-7 your score here. They could extend the lead further, which is the crazy part, and they do. Rice should get another touchdown on the board unless this penalty is on the offense, and it's not. So it's on the defense. It was an offside penalty, and in spite of that offsides, it doesn't really affect anything. Rice still does get their touchdown anyways. But this UL Monroe team, an 8-4 squad, well, they have an above average record for a reason. They're not going to give up very easily. They're going to play with pride, even though this game does seem like it is effectively going to be over. And May will get his second rushing touchdown of the game. And they'll even go for the 2-point conversion as well. May is going to run it in himself, as Mark does provide a successful 2-point conversion. But just too little too late here for UL Monroe, as they will fall short against the Rice Owls 31-15 in the Texas Bowl. Up next, we do have the Armed Forces Bowl that we got going on. Both these teams at points of the season were ranked in the top 25, but Missouri, definitely in that second half of the season, they were fighting for their life. They had to get a big win against Texas A&M just to be eligible for bowl season in the first place, right? That's the crazy part in all this. So Arkansas State, they're taking on Missouri. We'll see if Missouri can make that bowl appearance worthwhile at this point of year, as Arkansas State lines up in shotgun formation, looking for their first touchdown in the game, as we got a quarterback option, taking it out over to the left-hand side, breaks a tackle, makes another tackle, can he get into the end zone? No, Wayne Brantley was really close, though, to punching that in. We'll see if it turns into 6 points later on in the drive, though, as nice little spin move for Anthony Jackson to evade that defender. And sure enough, Arkansas State makes it a 10-0 lead. But before we leave the first quarter, Missouri, who does like to employ that triple option, well, they run to success towards the end of the first quarter. And we end up seeing quite a few points scored here in the Armed Forces Bowl. But it looks like Arkansas State, they seem like they got the sauce to win the Armed Forces Bowl. Make it 24-13 going into the final quarter. Missouri looking for some big plays to happen. This is one that they needed, as that was a beautiful job running the option. Yet again, Missouri not done yet. They're going for the 2-point conversion here. And the 2-point conversion is actually good. James Bryant, he's just going to run it in all by himself. But unfortunately, Arkansas State runs out the rest of the clock after that, as the Red Wolves do take down Missouri by a field goal. So now we go back out to the West Coast. We got the LA Bowl, sponsored by the Jimmy Kimmel Late Night Show. They are one of the newer sponsors in college football. BYU versus San Diego State, and I was excited for this bowl game in particular, just because not only is San Diego State, they come from one of the best conferences in college football, so it'll be interesting to see what they can do here in non-conference play, right, now that they're back at it again. But these two are actually rivals. These two teams historically do not like each other at all. They are sworn enemies of each other, backing from their days when BYU was actually used to be a Mountain West school before they decided to go to that independent route. But here we are in the first quarter, and early on, we got a potential classic on our hands. Still a tied game, still knotted up at 7 apiece, as BYU looks at their first lead of the game, and they got it to Will Wilson, who gets his second receiving touchdown of the LA Bowl. And they needed all of those points that they can get, because BYU, that was the difference. Those 6 the 7 points end up being the ultimate difference as BYU wins against San Diego State 20-14 as Victor Johnson, he was feeling himself. Meanwhile, while that was going on, we also had the Lending Tree Bowl game that we had between the Thundering Herd of Marshall and the Green Wave of Tulane, both of them with somewhat similar color schemes, thankfully different uniform sets, so we could actually tell these two teams apart. Tulane going with their sky blue jerseys as they are the home team today. But, you know, in this Lending Tree Bowl, Tulane's going to get their scoring started with a 13-yard touchdown for Chris Green. But it won't take long for Marshall to marshal up a response as well. You know, a little bit of a, pun for you guys. I didn't really mean, to be honest with you guys, but Marshall down by 9 points still as they flick it off to the tight end over the right hand side. Marshall fights back and makes this just a 2-point game before we go to the half. Meanwhile, in the fourth quarter, Marshall got another score on the board, but Tulane has a chance to retake the lead. Looking over to the right hand side, 4 defenders. Seth Stewart trying his best to run through all of them, but there was just too much mass to run through. So Tulane's going to go for it here on 4th down. This is a 4th and 1. One that Tulane needs. And not only do we get the first down, oh no, they get the touchdown. A touchdown that edges Marshall ultimately. So Tulane ends their year on a high note, winning the Lending Tree Bowl game. But we have more top 25 matchup. It's been a little bit since we've seen 2 top 25 teams go up against each other, but in the Alamo Bowl, not only do we get a top 25 matchup, we get a top 15 matchup. Michigan State and Nebraska both had excellent seasons this year. So as Nebraska is number 11, Michigan State is number 12. And early on, I thought we could possibly see quite a bit of scoring in this game as Michigan State, they don't take very much time at all as Sam Jackson will get the scoring start just a couple of minutes into this game. And then late in the first quarter, final play of the first quarter, by the way, Sam Jackson's going to break a couple of tackles, but he puts the ball on the ground. Nebraska, they're going to recover, and he's got a convoy. Only one man that could possibly catch up to him, and he doesn't. He can't make the tackle, and while Michigan State is reeling, Nebraska takes full advantage. They take the lead towards the end of the first quarter. So we'll see if this wakes up the Nebraska offense, as Nebraska's offense hasn't done anything crazy, and it looks like that will continue. Nebraska, another team that does like to run that triple option. And I was a little surprised by how popular the triple option has become, because we did simulate this 10 years into the future. That's how we ended up with all of these fictional rosters and whatnot. But Akeem Porter is going to get a 23-yard strike that will provide a first down for the Spartans. Meanwhile, they'll actually go to the toss to the left. They run the toss perfectly as well before Travis Douglas is going to be forced out of bounds. So now, 1st and 10 coming up following that big run. They go back to the ground game. And look at this big hole for Jonas Whitlock. Has no problem finding the end zone as the Spartans extend their lead 14-10. Now officially being your score. So we'll see if Nebraska can answer back as they go back to their triple option. They're not abandoning their offensive philosophy, and for good reason, because Nebraska could do a pretty good job running it. They run it all the way down to the goal line. We're on 2nd and goal. Their quarterback's going to take care of it himself, and CJ McIntyre gives Nebraska the lead yet again. Now looking at a field goal difference. However, Michigan State does not respond, so Nebraska can extend their lead further. Throwing to the left-hand side, but the DB Mosses the receiver. And now the Spartans can march down. A chance to tie the game before we go into halftime. Jackson in the shotgun, dropping back. Nebraska has 8 people in coverage, and that had to be a covered sack because Nebraska's pressure did not get home immediately. There was some time that they needed. So back end holding pretty well, and that was just Sam Jackson just trying to make a play happen. Really wasn't much of anything here. I mean, I'm not even sure what Sam Jackson was looking at, to be honest. Not a good decision at all, to be honest with you. So Nebraska still holds on to their lead into the third quarter. They do get a field goal out of it, and I don't know what happened to Michigan State after the first quarter. Thought the Spartans were, going to get a lot of points in this game, and it's not happening. It's certainly not happening like that at all, as Nebraska really has played significantly better. Got the red zone turnover as well to go with it. But here comes the Spartans now trying to make a big play before we go into that final quarter. Here we go now. Fourth quarter now. Down by 9 points. Jackson looks over the right-hand side. Got a receiver. And that's going to be Matt Lewis that picks up 23 yards, setting up a red zone opportunity. A couple plays later, they get into the red zone. They will actually pass it in the red zone. And Wayne Jones, even with all that compressed space, well, he was still wide butt naked open to go with it. However, that touchdown was not going to be enough, though, as Nebraska, they do hang on to win 23-21, a big win here in the Alamo Bowl. But now we jump into a rematch of the 2010 National Championship game that is going to put the Texas Longhorns up against the Alabama Crimson Tide in the battle for the Guaranteed Rate Bowl game. And this Guaranteed Rate Bowl game has us out here in the Southwest. This is at Arizona State University Stadium. So definitely a hot one down there on the field, but not as hot as Josh Maxwell, though. Josh Maxwell able to go ahead and find the end zone for the Crimson Tide, who will take a 7-3 lead. But this is a game that did not see very many points scored, at least not initially, as Alabama really comes out and they played hard in this first quarter and a half. They actually do build up a 21-6 lead before Texas. They get down the length of the field to try to make this a one-score game. And sure enough, they will find the end zone. That is Trey Dixon who gets the touchdown, and the Texas Longhorns will make it a 21-13 game. But does Texas have enough gas to make a comeback happen? Can they make a run in the second half? That second rushing touchdown by Trey Dixon certainly helps in that regard. They do opt for the extra point. They don't try to go for the 2-point conversion, at least not this early in the game. But Alabama trying to shut the door, though, as Curtis West goes with a 5-wide set, drops back, is going to look over the middle and finds Ryan Steffens into the end zone. Touchdown for the Crimson Tide. And the Crimson Tide do end up winning the national championship rematch from 2010, 31-23 in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. Which now takes us to yet another bowl game that we got. A lot of action here in bowl season, guys. Let me know if you enjoy this bowl game format down in the comment section, by the way, where every single bowl game is shown in one episode, at least outside of the college football playoff, of course. But right now, we got the Tony of the Tiger Bowl up next, and Fresno State will be taking on the Clemson Tigers in this regard, as Fresno State does take the lead initially. This Bulldog squad, it's a solid team. This is a team that actually played Michigan pretty tough, to be honest with you guys. If you remember what happened, in week 1, week number 2, like that part of the season, as Fresno State, they'll get not just one touchdown, but 2 touchdowns here in the first quarter. Fresno State looking to run Clemson off the field, as the Tigers have struggled to score in this game. Still have not scored yet, but their quarterback looks to change that, as Brooke Hansen gets them into a goal line situation for the very first time today, and they'll look to capitalize. As next play, we'll see Dan Reynolds finally get the goose egg off the Clemson scoreboard, and Clemson finally finds his groove. Jumping into the fourth quarter, though, and Clemson with a chance to take the lead. So Fresno State, remember, they were up 17-0 at one point, and now we're looking at Clemson finally taking their first lead with 2 minutes left to play in the game, and Brooke Hansen does it. Brooke Hansen is going to score in the Tony the Tiger Bowl. It's an incredible comeback by Clemson as they overcome a 17-point deficit at one point in order to be bowl game champions. So that was a tough pill to swallow if you're Fresno State, but now we go to the Music City Bowl between two teams that used to be in the same conference, but they were realigned into different conferences. It's Georgia State, part of the SEC, whereas South Alabama, well, they are a part of the Sun Belt Conference still. So both these teams looking to get a win so that they can be above 500, finishing with a sub 500 season, even though you do make it to a conference championship game because of that. Well, that's going to make it, you hate to see it, right? But Georgia State's got their number early. They're up 13-0 late in the first quarter, but Jermaine Richards is trying to change that, sets them up into a goal line situation where Richards hands it off. No, it's a fake. He bamboozles the entire Georgia State defense, and South Alabama pulls within just 6 points. But now we jump into that second quarter. It's been a pretty high-scoring first quarter so far. Could be more of the same here in the second as Chad Henderson, he's going to run his way into the end zone too. Georgia State certainly in some control as well as the Panthers look to finish the job in the second half. And there's still a lot of football left to be played. But man, South Alabama's in some trouble right now. They need a response themselves. Down by 17. South Alabama's going to score off the screen. Finds Joey Vox in the end zone. And what Jermaine Richards does, he continues to build on the school record for most passing touchdowns in a season. That's his 26th passing touchdown. So South Alabama has not had a rich history in terms of really strong starting quarterback play, but Jermaine Richards, it's easy to say that he is the best quarterback that South Alabama has ever had, and they're going to need him if they want to win this game. They do rally back to tie it at 27 apiece as Georgia State throws an interception, and that interception, does that do the job? I don't know if it actually does the job or not, but it does set South Alabama up the score with a minute left. They could win this bowl game. Throwing over the middle, finds a receiver, and he actually gets up, or at least he almost gets up before the ref does blow his whistle finally. So CJ Bowl gets him into the red zone now. Red zone opportunity. They could just sit on it and get the last second field goal, but instead what they end up doing is Andy Kelly, the transfer out of North Carolina A&T, he's just going to run it in for the game-winning score, and South Alabama comes back and wins the Music City Bowl against Georgia State. Speaking of those Georgia teams, so we'll next check out Georgia Southern taking on a Texas Tech team that was ranked in the top 25, but ever since their loss to Baylor, they never had the same mojo. They end up losing 6 of their next 10 games, so they kind of, they didn't have that momentum again after that game against Baylor, which was a top 25 matchup at the time. But we'll see if they can get themselves together enough to win this Liberty Bowl game, as Georgia Southern is going to make it difficult on them as Lewis Curtis, midway through the second quarter of action, he'll even up the score against the Red Rebels of Texas Tech. Meanwhile, the Red Raiders look to get back on the scoreboard, trying to answer the Georgia Southern touchdown. That's a way to do it, a big boy run for Brandon Salas. Brandon Salas find the end zone for a touchdown as the Red Rebels make it 14-6. With less than 45 seconds left in the first half, the quarterback that did transfer in from Chattanooga tries to scramble out, but has some butterfingers, man. Might have had too many butterfingers. Texas Tech does get a field goal off of that, and now the Eagles of Georgia Southern down by multiple possessions as they're looking to put an exclamation point on this season that they've had. A nice season for Georgia Southern. First and goal coming up, though. Eric Jackson, the Chattanooga transfer. He is actually going to rumble and stumble his way into the end zone. And they settle for the extra point. Still just a one-score game. This could tie it, and they do! Eric Jackson scores yet again. They'll tie it up before we go into the final period. Could go in either direction as Cornelius Graves wants to make sure that Texas Tech finishes with a above 500 record, but even with that, it was not enough. Did not catch that final touchdown as we sim passed it by accident, but Georgia Southern does win the Liberty Bowl. And now we are starting to run out of bowl games to cover. Just 4 more bowl games left in this episode, and one of them is the First Responders Bowl that is sponsored by Sev Pro, and this will pit Texas A&M, who did lose in their conference championship game to Oklahoma. In the previous episode, they will be taking on the Bulldogs of Mississippi State, and we'll see if Texas A&M can recover from their loss that they took during conference championship weekend, as Texas A&M no longer ranked because of that. As Mississippi State, they're going to throw it out to the left-hand side, and they're still going. Lance Jenkins never giving up on the play because he never heard a whistle. So we got a few extra yards because of that. And that certainly helps out the Stanford transfer and Mark Barbado. I'm not talking about Stanford as in the Cardinal that's out in the West Coast. I'm talking about the Bulldogs of Stanford. So this quarterback going from a Bulldog to stay in a Bulldog, but at the FBS level. As speaking of Mark Barbado does find the end zone for the Bulldogs. Could help him secure this victory depending on what Lawrence Hughes does. The lefty throws over the middle, finds his receiver, and they'll be looking at a goal line situation themselves. One that they desperately need to go ahead and convert on. First and goal with 5.5 minutes left. They toss it out to the right-hand side. He's got the blocks, and he'll be untouched into the end zone. Touchdown for Texas A&M as Aggies pulled it just within a field goal. And a chance to also win this game with less than 2 minutes left. Lawrence looks over to the left-hand side, tries to set up the screen, but it's read like a novel, and that's going to slam the door. Will Hargrove with the play of the game for Mississippi State as they pull it off against Texas A&M 23-13 to win the First Responders Bowl. But this bowl game right here, this was the bowl game that I was the most excited about outside of the college football playoff matchups. We got LSU, who was a preseason #1 team in the country. While they didn't live up to expectations fully, they still had a strong season. They're ranked in the top 10 because of that. Meanwhile, Minnesota flying under the radar. They started the year unranked, but even though they didn't make it to the conference championship game, they went 10-2, and they'll actually score first against LSU as well. Beautiful strike in the back of the end zone, and Minnesota starts off extremely strong, but LSU is a different animal. You know, couple of bad losses. They lost in the conference championship game. If they beat an Ole Miss, they would have been in the next episode, which is just college football playoff games, instead of in the back end of the bowl season episode. But LSU, man, a game that is also sponsored by Cheez Its, by the way, but this is the Cheez Its Citrus Bowl. But that being said, quarterback Anthony Williams, he's feeling himself, man. Throws a dot to Damian Morton that sets up a 25-yard gain. And then with first and goal opportunity, Williams just going to run it in himself, shows that toughness and mobility. And Anthony Williams extends the lead for LSU, 17-7. That will officially be your score. Meanwhile, with 1 minute left in the first quarter, they still have a chance to extend the lead even more. And how about this run after the catch by Andy Ellis? You think that was somebody that wanted their way into the end zone? Well, yeah, they certainly got that there, as Minnesota in the second half looks over the left-hand side. It's intercepted, and this is going back to the crib. Touchdown, LSU! And the Tigers score yet again. Tyrone Jones is bamboozled. He has been fooled as well. And LSU will ultimately run away and win this game, because sometimes it's just better to be lucky than it is to be good. So not only is LSU a really good football team, but it did seem like a lot of the bounces, the 50-50 bowls and whatnot, they went LSU's way, and you could tell with this drubbing of Minnesota 41-7. But now, just a couple of bowl games that are left to be covered. One of them is the Reliaquest Bowl game that is between the Yellow Jackets of Georgia Southern and the Miami Redhawks, not the Miami Hurricanes that are in the college football playoff. But that being said, we'll see what this Miami team can do. Did see them once in their rivalry game against Cincinnati. They do just enough to go bowling, but they're going to need to bring their A game if they want to come out and beat Georgia Tech, as the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets going to try to hold them up outside of the end zone. But this fullback, Joey Nelson, he's going to rumble and stumble into a goal line situation here. Third and goal now. We'll see if Miami can actually punch it in. And what is it? Georgia Tech did make it really difficult for them to punch it into the end zone. But Lance Vincent finds his way in eventually. But after that, Georgia Tech did not mess around. They did not find out. It was all Georgia Tech in this ball game. They go 31-7 as your score. And they might be adding on yet another score after that. Late in the third quarter, nice run up the gut. That's going to go for a first down for Robert Smith. So now, 1st and 10 for the Yellow Jackets as they look to extend what is already a massive lead for Georgia Tech. And if Robert Smith actually stayed on his feet, he would have had a touchdown outright. But it will not affect the scoreboard ultimately, because on the very next play, well, Georgia Tech runs it in anyway. So Lance Willis helps dominate Miami. It doesn't look as close as what the score actually says. Georgia Tech gets an easy win in a Reliaquest Bowl game. But now our last bowl game is the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl. This is the last bowl game that we will see before we take a quick look at what that college football playoff bracket is ultimately going to be looking like. And this bowl game features two teams that used to be in the ACC, Florida State and Virginia Tech. Florida State did move over to the SEC, while Virginia Tech is still with many of the Virginia and Carolina schools in the ACC conference. But Virginia Tech's trying to get the first touchdown of the game. Neither team has scored yet, but that will be broken when Paul Perkins is able to find the soft spot between three separate defenders. So Virginia Tech had the lead early and they just never looked back. Virginia Tech does beat Florida State 14-3 in a game that didn't have many highlights. But speaking of those highlights, hopefully we'll see plenty of highlights in the next episode, because what we are going to do is we are going to see this entire college football playoff play out. So you will see not only the quarterfinal games, but the semifinals and ultimately that national championship game in the next episode. I am extremely excited to give you college football playoff action for you guys in the next episode, as we will be crowning that national champion. It's going to be a fun episode, man. I hope you guys are excited for it. If you are, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button for me. Hit that subscribe button as well if you do have to be brand new and love that college football content like I do. But with that being said, this is John Chick Game on the mic signing off. Hope you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.